Welcome to the Exposing Scientology podcast, where we delve into what really goes on in the world of Scientology and Scientologists, and sometimes take side journeys into other organizations that display similar traits. In fact, this week, we're going to take a bit of a side journey into other organizations because I am very, very happy to welcome Sarah Edmonson and Anthony Nippy Ames to the show. They are the stars of The Vow on HBO about NXIVM. I have been on their podcast, A Little Bit Culty. They are wonderful people who I now consider friends, and I'm really happy that they're here with me today. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Nippy.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Great to see
Good.
you.
You
Looking
too.
so well.
Well, nobody can see us because we're just going to have this go out as audio, but we can see each other.
Yes.
People are complaining, oh, well, you should put this, you should do this audio and visual. It's so much easier to just do the audio.
I know.
Yeah,
So,
And also you can just pick your nose and no one will see it.
yeah,
I see it
exactly.
there.
Well, yeah, but
Mike
you know,
sees it.
your friends,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
exactly.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to talk to you about today, but I know that you recently did an episode of A Little Bit Culty with Claire Headley.
Yes.
The wonderful, amazing Claire Headley.
We love Claire.
Yeah, so do I. And
Yeah,
I
she's
also saw that you had done one with Tom Crummins, which is really interesting about the Boy Scouts, because Tom Crummins is on the board of Child USA with me.
I had no idea.
I didn't either. I didn't know that he was on your podcast until I was looking through, sort of preparing for this. Wonderful guy. Amazing
guy.
It's one of our favorite episodes recently.
For those of you who don't know, it's about the Boy Scouts.
Right.
And yeah, Tom's leading that charge. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
Yep. And I know you've had a very wide array of guests on A Little Bit Culty. And I'm sort of curious to pick your brain about what you think the most important lessons that you've learned from just that diverse group of people that you've spoken to.
That's a great question. Actually, I know you just set us up real nice for this, but it's actually what we're writing our second book about.
That's right.
Well, I was going to mention your book. I just hadn't gotten to it yet.
I know,
will,
but I
and I'll have a link to it.
I know.
Always
We're
enterprising.
not even there yet. We're only on chapter 3. We're writing it, but
Always enterprising, Sarah.
And we don't even have we have a working title, but what we're trying to do is glean all the nuggets that we've learned from the podcast and put it in a resource, because we found that when we got out, there was like all these academic books about cults and amazing docuseries and podcasts to watch, and then other books that are more about healing and religious trauma syndrome and PTSD and all this stuff, but there wasn't anything in one resource. And so that's what we're trying to do. But in looking back over our podcast history, we're recognizing we have, learned so much. And by the way, it's 7 years since leaving. Last week, Nippy turned 50. And 7 years ago, he was turning, let's do the math on that, 43. We had his birthday, and the next day he dropped me off at the FBI. So his birthday kind of marks our freedom in our
That's amazing
cult. Yeah. So we're 7 years free. And
well, happy birthday too, Nippy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And in that, around this time, we're always reflecting, wow, I cannot believe it's been 7 years and we've gotten out, we've learned so much. But to answer your question, which was, oh man, it's been a day. What have we learned?
Yeah. What's the most important? I mean, I know you've learned
so much. Couple nuggets. You start with, let's go back. You do one, then I got one.
Well, I'll say, first of all, people have their things that they're sensitive to, and it's case by case. The thing that I became, really the most sensitive to, and kind of had this feeling when we got in, is you're definitely joining a good thing, as Mark Vicente so aptly put in The Vow. But you're also joining something that appears altruistic, and the abuse comes in normally on the heels of the altruism. And so for me, I'm most sensitive to things that claim that they're going to do this great thing in the world to garner your support. And then they go in on language, they go in on all these things to make you obedient to the narrative. And any sort of challenging of that narrative becomes evidence of your guilt of some sort. And so you can pick whatever side you want to do that on, because I see that mostly in the political realms right now. And that's where I kind of see the extremes coming out. And the playbook is pretty much the same. It's just a variation of that.
That's a good point.
Found.
Yep.
Yeah. I would say that. And also I think that the biggest nugget is just like, this shit is everywhere. It doesn't have to be a traditional, cult with L. Ron Hubbard or Keith Raniere at the helm. And it's so obvious now to anyone who has watched either of our documentaries or researched at all. Some of them don't even have a leader, but there's a group that is problematic. And you don't even have to call it a cult. It's just they're doing a bunch of shitty, toxic behavior like shunning or excommunication or, gaslighting any dissenters. Basically our thing has been like any group can become culty.
And all with the intent of gaining your mind. I think, people are after your mind. And it sounds, almost conspiratorial and hyperbolic to say that, but, advertising, how much money goes into advertising to get you to purchase Coca-Cola? If you want to look it up, it's around $4 billion. So there's a constant campaign for people in anything to get your mind on board with something. And I think that's the thing that I've become most sensitive to, and seeing that what goes on, the abuse or the intent in the cults isn't proprietary to the cults. It's kind of everywhere. And so, putting language to that and understanding the symptoms of that and the red flags of that have kind of been where I've educated myself, tried to imbue it into our podcast and even our children. And every time I meet one of their kids, so Sarah was joking, we had our kid's 10th birthday, and a bunch of kids spent the night, and they were all just pounding sugar and bad things. And I did a little TED talk on sugar at the dinner table
with the kids,
with like 10 or 15 of them the next morning. And I was like, hey, someone's got to tell these kids the sugar that they're putting into their body is more than a horse shit intake in the year. So I'm always on that kind of crusade right now.
You should have seen them, Mike. The kids were like, well, if I eat Chick-fil-A once a week, is that okay?
And I was like, well, if you look at this,
Mr. Ames, they were really trying to justify their junk food.
I got out my pipe and my tweed jacket.
I think this is going to be Nippy's TED Talk. It's not going to be about cults. It's going to be about diet.
Well, I just want to.
Well, that's all right. I think that's a really good thing. I find that fascinating, Nippy, that focus on the mental prison or the mental capture, because I bring this up all the time because, my story and the story of other people in the C organization, it has a lot of elements of physical restraint. And we even saw that in NXIVM, with the very controlled environment and, people being locked in rooms and not allowed to come out and, surrounded. And I always say to people, look, the barbed wire fences and the lights and the motion sensors and the security guards and the, chase down tactic, that's not the hardest thing to break.
Right.
The hardest thing to break is the mental prison that you end up getting yourself into or being put into. And I think that is a very appropriate nugget to take, is that it's not necessarily about the physical circumstances in which you find yourself. It's more the mental control that someone has managed, or some organization or person has managed to exert over you and convince you that what they are saying is right, and anything that you think different from that is absolutely wrong.
Exactly.
Right. And unfortunately, the situation is the people that are observing it relate most to the physical abuse. They go, oh, that's bad. And people can identify that. And collectively as a group, we can identify physical abuses. What I think most people don't understand is the physical abuses are a manifestation or a symptom of the emotional abuse that goes on.
That goes first.
Yeah, that happens before. And putting language to that and having people as equally as outraged when they see that as they are when they see the physical is a good objective for all of us.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it was one of the genius things that your prosecutor did in the prosecution of Keith Raniere, was to get the emotional abuse to be focused on, because of course the sensation with NXIVM was the branding of the women. And that was like everybody gets up in arms and freaked out about that. And it was great for gaining attention to the subject, but it wasn't real. I mean, as you say, you have to go a long way down the road of being in the mental prison before you're willing to put yourself or allow yourself to be branded by someone. I mean, it doesn't just happen. You're not being held down, you know, forcefully restrained while that's happening. You're basically submitting to it because you've been persuaded that that's the right thing to do. We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're a Christian who's looking to do more, be more, and see more in the kingdom of God, the book from author Charles G. Robinette, Radically Apostolic, will serve as a map for your journey. Experience apostolic equipping and impartation. Activate the power of prophetic prayer. Apprehend kingdom vision and calling. Operate in dominion and authority. This must-read book is filled with testimonials of notable miracles. Available now on Amazon, Books A Million, and Barnes & Noble. Radically Apostolic is also available in English, German, Spanish, French, and Portuguese.
Yeah, and then being taught to say, "Master, would you brand me? It would be an honor," so that it appears consensual.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, Keith actually said in court, like this was not in court. He didn't talk because he's a coward, but that was one of the key pieces of evidence, a thumb drive that India found in Allison's house, with Keith saying to her how she should do the branding and to have the women ask for it. So it appears consensual. And
there's another
so fucking dumb.
There's another component to it outside the outrage, I think, too. You look at the people around it and the environment around it that have normalized the abuse. Most people go, "Oh, that would never happen to me." That would, and I think reserve your judgment, because people get indoctrinated case by case. And not everyone was on board with that. Not everyone saw it. Not everyone was in that kind of environment. There was enough people to stop it. So I think understanding how people can get indoctrinated to various degrees and where their morality gets usurped by, a higher being or someone else, a guru, is important to understand, because, and this is what's going on in our political world right now. I feel somewhat vindicated to see how people go so extreme to the right and how people go so extreme to the left and then pretend that they don't.
Right.
And then use it as a cloak to criticize the other person, not recognizing they're doing the very behaviors that are cultish, and their minds are in that sort of prison. And it's gone on.
They're so righteous.
Yeah. I mean, it goes on anywhere. And we just had something, Sarah was on Jesse Waters on Fox News, and people just couldn't get past and some people, it's a small minority.
I could see who's where, because some people are like, "Oh my God, you're on Jesse Waters. I love him. He's so great." And other people are like, "Oh my God, you did Fox News?"
And I stay out of it because I don't think,
either way, I should be talking to.
Yeah. I don't think the internet is a place to have, it's the lowest form of engagement, the lowest form of discourse. But suffice to say, people were doing the behaviors that we were trying to talk about on our podcast. They're doing it on our wall. And I'm just like, you
guys are missing the point. Like, did you watch the whole clip, or you decided it was bad because it was Fox News?
And it's funny because, like, I've done Megyn Kelly. I consider Megyn Kelly a friend.
She's lovely.
A champion of,
yes.
But I don't agree with her politics. But I said,
and I don't need to.
I said to people, I'm not there to talk about politics. Yeah. I'm there to talk about Scientology and cults and abuses. And there is a whole audience, maybe, 45% of the country that are totally on board with that audience. Maybe there's 55% that are not. I didn't even know how it breaks down, but Mike, there's a large number of people that listen.
Do me a favor. Go to our post with me and Jesse and please weigh in. Say, by the way, Mike Rinder here to say, no, I just don't get involved in the drama.
I don't think people go to a post and walk away with their mind changed.
No, they don't. But sidebar, we did Megyn Kelly. It drops next week, and
she was lovely.
She was so lovely. She has such empathetic, kind questions, and we asked her to come on ours to talk about her culty experience with Fox. So here's hoping that Megyn Kelly comes in a little bit culty.
She has a pretty culty experience with Fox.
Yeah, I know.
And not only with Fox, with Greta. Greta Van Susteren was
really.
Oh, that's how. It's a long story that I won't diverge into. She may not want to talk about it either, but Greta basically disconnected from her at Fox News, and they worked next door to each other.
Oh,
because she was taking the anti-Scientology side, having me on her show and talking about things that Greta found objectionable, and so therefore she basically told her that Greta told her stuff that none of them were allowed to speak to any of Megyn Kelly's stuff or people.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that. Brutal.
That can't exist in our news world. That's
it's crazy.
Not that there's other things that don't, but
it's crazy. And I'm sure that if that story ever gets back to Greta, she'll say, no, it never happened.
That made me think of another thing that I've learned, which is that, and I talked about this in the TED Talk too, is that nobody's immune, and that anyone who thinks that they're immune is the most susceptible to being conned, tricked, brought into something abusive or toxic or culty. And it may not be like, and I always tell people this, it may not be right now, and you may not have been compelled to join NXIVM, but I guarantee you have at some point in your life, it will happen that you will be at a crossroads or have some sort of, we call situational vulnerability, where somebody invites you to a wine and cheese party or a yoga class or a Montessori moms group or whatever. And that is the gateway to the thing that may or may not be a problem. So everyone can join. Everyone is susceptible of that way if they don't know the red flags. But if you think you're not susceptible and you don't learn the red flags, then you're the biggest target.
I'd target.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, a lot of people say, well, I'd never be stupid enough to get involved in a cult. There are a lot of really, really intelligent, smart, nice, great people who get very involved in cults. You guys, Mark. I mean, Mark Vicente is one of the most intelligent, thoughtful people that I know, and he got sucked in because what they do is they prey on. If you're a smart person and an empathetic person, they prey on that. Mm-hmm. They tell you that you are going to be able to change the world, that you're going to be able to help all the people around you, not even necessarily yourself. You can help your friends, your family. You can help do this. You can help do that.
Yeah.
And that draws people who otherwise you would not believe have any interest in getting involved in a group like that. It sucks them right in. There are tons of people in Scientology who are just really good people. Mm-hmm. But just now,
there's really going to be someone you relate to. Yeah. Well, you take the psychology of someone who thinks it wouldn't happen to them. Normally, and I can diagnose myself. If I don't think I'm susceptible to it, it means I'm smarter, right? So then, if you're going to go into my psychology, you just confirm the fact that I'm smart to me.
Yep.
And you lure me, you love bomb my smartness, and you validate my smartness, and I feel good around you because you validate my self-image, right? And so now that's trust, that's rapport. Then you're free to do other lifts to me. And now I'm not saying I'm going to go all in on a cult, but I'm malleable to doing something that you might want me to do, right? Yep. Now in my case, it was a high school girlfriend who I still had feelings for. So now you've stroked my pride and ego, and now you're in the romantic realm with me. So now you have two hooks in me. Right. Yep. And now she knows that I was like a guy who was reading books about leadership, wanted to be the best, and she has a goals program. So that's a third hook. So, hey, if you're smart enough to figure that out and know that's going on with you, then maybe you just have trust issues too. There's a lot of things, a lot of variables that were working at me at an age in my life, 26, 27, when I was susceptible. So it's not an intelligence thing. And I think that's important to keep hammering on people. A lot of really smart people are operating on a false premise.
Yep.
And dumb people join cults too.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Dumb people don't grow them.
No.
Yeah. And generally they don't rise to the top of them either.
No.
Right.
That
one of our chapters is called Busy Bees.
Yeah.
They need people like me or like a little busy bee. Just gotta build it.
You
I don't
didn't
think
even
anyone
need
was
to
busier than
explain
Mike.
it
Yeah,
to
I
me,
know.
Sarah.
You knew.
Mike, you were on jets. You saw the world, Mike. We were in Albany and Vancouver.
Yeah, you definitely got the better end of the stick. You got to travel.
You had the better travel plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Which cult provides more opportunities to see the world? Scientology or NXIVM? Discuss.
Mike getting off planes and going to different airports.
It's funny. I just wanted to harken back to something that you said, Nippy, too, that I wanted to make a comment about. I have this kind of a mantra that I hang on to very strongly, which is don't judge unless you've walked in the person's shoes. And I mean, literally, even beyond just, oh, yeah, I was in Scientology or I was in the Sea organization. No, every person's experience is different. The push and pulls of what's important to them, what they value, what they cherish. Nobody knows exactly what is inside the mind of someone else, ever. Mm-hmm. They can relate to experience. They can be sympathetic and empathetic to what has gone on with them, but you can't ever really understand what is going on in the head of someone to be able to tell them, here's what you need to do to get out. Like, I've just never found it works. I have the only thing I've ever found has worked is to say, here's what happened for me. Mm-hmm. And you figure out how that might apply to you or not.
Your version. Yeah, your version.
Your version of my story may be something that sparks something or opens a door or turns on a light bulb or whatever. But you cannot presume to understand what someone else is thinking and the pressures that they are feeling and the things that are important to them unless you've lived their life.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay, I wanted to ask you something else. There are still people, and it's sort of along the lines of this discussion, there are still people that support Keith Raniere, right?
Correct.
Okay, and he is now in prison for the rest of his life for his horrendous crimes against the people, including the people that are supporting him.
Mm-hmm.
What is your take on that?
Well, a couple of things that we're not in their heads, so we don't know for sure. But some of them are quite vocal, actually, and have a channel and share their beliefs, which is highly disturbing to watch in real time. But basically, from what we can see, is that it's and I hate to use this word because it's kind of a NXIVM word. We used to say that people had like a pride issue, and there was in NXIVM, there's two types of pride: to recognize your results and feel good about it. But ego pride was a really terrible thing. Like I had control issues. So-and-so has pride issues. Nippy's got anger issues. Like everyone's got their thing, right? Mm-hmm. And with pride, the true part of it is that I believe that at this point, and even at the beginning when everything fell apart, there was a couple of mechanisms that kept their belief in place. One of them was, and I had this too, like when I heard negative things about Keith and I went to like Lauren or Mark, like, wait, they said that he did this. And they would say, was that your experience? I said, no, it wasn't my experience, because it wasn't my experience. And so they'd say, well, what are you going to trust? Some, hack writer who's a convict, Rick Ross, or whatever, not convict, but like, they'd say it's something about him to discredit his character or your experience. And I would be, well, of course, my experience is so good. So a lot of those women, like, were kind of for the people, especially who are still loyal now, didn't know Keith, weren't very close with Keith. They were not inner circle. Most of the higher ranking people have woken up and denounced Keith, except for Claire Bronfman, as far as we know, has not. And I think in her case, and also the people that remain, their image is tied to the fact that nobody wants to make a mistake like this. Nobody wants to admit, they fucked up. We did that. And Nippy uses the metaphor, the shit sandwich. We had to eat a huge shit sandwich and it was awful. And we did it. And this is part of how we're making our amends in the world. that shit sandwich for them is so much bigger now. Because now
humiliation part of it.
Yeah, they were humiliated. And like, especially with the women who were branded, or maybe sex was a part of it for them, they've got to admit that not only were they abused, they were sexually abused, they were manipulated. And I think also some of the ones that remain now, we saw this in season 2 of The Vow, is they have some sort of connection to Keith. Like Keith can talk to people from prison, right? And he's saying to them, you know, you're the most loyal, like you're the most special, like you're the only one who has the commitment and the loyalty to stay loyal to the end. And I don't know what they think they're going to get out of that, but it's better. It's better than going back to their families who've said, I think you might be in a cult. Like every single one of the people that remain, except for one, we are in touch with their family members. We are in touch with them, and they're worried about their kids in this situation to this day. And we're trying to help them navigate them maintaining their connection, because they know that if they say, you know, you are in a cult, and that person, some of these loyal members have said, no, I'm not in a cult. Like, this is a good thing. Keith has been misunderstood. Keith is the most humanitarian, ethical man in the world, and the FBI framed him. And they have to believe that and double down and triple down and quadruple down, and maybe to the point that they even have lost touch with their family. They've burned those bridges. So all they actually have now is each other. And it's a very small little group, and it's very tight knit. And I would understand if I was them, because I've kind of been there when I was at NXIVM. It's like nobody understands. Nobody understands what we are fighting against. And that's got to feel better than having to face the world and eat the massive shit sandwich. That's my best guess. So that's it.
Yeah, that's about sums it up. I wouldn't add that much. I mean,
yeah, that's a great answer. I think that the advice that I give to family members with respect to Scientology is, do not try to convince the person that they're wrong, because that never works. It just that feeds straight into the us versus them mentality of every cult organization that exists. But tell them that you love them and that you will always be there if they need some. And that seed of unconditional love and humanity and a sort of a potential lifeline. Is, I think, the most important thing that family members can provide, because
I agree.
Go ahead, Nippy.
Giving them something to resist is what emboldens them. They feel righteous when they have something to resist. Don't be that person that emboldens them, you know?
Right.
And I think that's partly why we were able to get out, is that we had family members, especially in Vancouver, who were just welcoming us back with open arms. We had not burnt those bridges. My mom, even though she knew not everything, but had a sense of who Keith really was, kept mostly quiet about it. And she was one of the first people I told, I'm not doing this anymore. And she was so happy. And because she kept that lifeline, we actually did an episode with Rachel Bernstein specifically for family members, because people ask us that question so often, and we want to provide that as like a resource for them. And that was one of our favorite episodes, and pretty much echoes exactly what you just said.
Yeah, well, we travel in the same circles.
Oh, yeah.
I've done Rachel's podcast too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yes,
she really is.
Okay, Sarah.
Yes.
You wrote a book, and I'll have a link to the book on my blog page that accompanies this, but it's called Scarred: The True Story How I Escaped NXIVM, the Cult That Bound My Life. And it's a wonderful book, and a harrowing book, and has a bunch of details about things that are not in the Vow HBO series, which I also recommend that everybody, if you haven't watched it, watch it. It is gripping and it is brilliant. But I wanted to ask you whether you found writing the book had benefits, that it benefited you, like in a healing way or recovery way, because I know that happened to me when I was writing my book. So I'm curious about what you saw when you were doing your book.
Absolutely, it was cathartic. It was really important for me also to kind of document, you know, from my own words, especially because there's like this terrible Lifetime movie out, and you absolutely, like, The Vow was very accurate for me, but it's just a very small part of my story, and I really wanted to have it just out there. I found it very very healing in that way. And also I realized as I was writing it, like I had huge blocks of my memory where I had to like go back and look at photos and talk to Nippy, like, where were we? Like, what were we doing for this chunk of time? It's such a blur. And actually even
where were we for our 30s?
Yeah, my 30s is like New York, LA, Mexico, Albany, Seattle, Tacoma, just Alaska, Fiji. Like, it was crazy. Actually, I guess we did.
Wait a minute. What about the travel that you shit travel plan?
I know
that just got blown out of the water.
My Fiji trip was the only exotic one. Alaska on the Bronfman jet was exciting, but I didn't get to see much of Alaska. But anyway, yeah. I will say though, I felt like I may have written it a bit too soon. I didn't realize it when I was writing it that I was actually still in quite a bit of trauma, and then we had a newborn. The timing of it was a little bit off. I was writing it with a newborn, and because we went the traditional publishing way, there was deadlines and they were trying to get it out while it was still in the news cycle. And I just feel like it was, even though I'm really proud of it, it was still like kind of a draft. I needed a bit more time, but it's also kind of raw. I think there was some review, maybe it was the New York Times. There was some big review that said like a brave but messy stab at redemption or something like that. And I was like, I totally agree. It feels a little messy. Like I needed another pass, but it's what it was and it's out there. And I feel great about it because it's where I was then. And then not writing now has been more, I feel invigorated. I feel it is also cathartic, but it's more like cathartic because now it's exciting to me. Like I'm
put language to everything.
Yeah. I'm like, what, like, how do we encapsulate this nugget? How do we, which guest did we have on that best describes what we've learned about love bombing, for example? And you're going to be in it, by the way, Mike. Like there's going to be a chapter. I'm not sure what, maybe indoctrination or I don't know. What
I think burning the shit down.
Oh yeah. Whistleblowing. Oh no, for sure. No, it's in this, it's in the proposal. The question of, do you become a whistleblower or not? It's already, I forgot about that. It's already there. It's in that chapter. And we talk about how having you and Leah and I said this when I was first on your podcast, but like having you guys as pace cars was, it was a template to follow. Like, okay, well, they did it. We can do it
in the right direction. Right?
Yeah. And then also just discussing like, what are the pros and cons of whistleblowing? What does it mean? What does it mean for your family? How do you decide if you want to do that? So that kind of thing. Like to me, I'm more fired up and it's educational. Whereas the other was like, what happened? I better write that down in order so we can like document this properly just for posterity. Thank you. Still have a little bit of a brain fog from I just played one of the PTSD. Sorry, mom brain, whatever.
Using that one a lot lately.
Oh yeah,
using that one a lot. Okay. Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I've said a lot of times when people have asked me, I had the luxury of being able to take basically as long as I wanted, because I had been working on putting something together for years and never could get the sort of impetus to finally finish it. But because I'd spent a lot of time thinking and writing notes and doing everything in sort of chronological sequence of everything that I could remember and adding stuff, taking a long time to do that. And then when I finally got to doing the book, I had my editor at Simon & Schuster recommended, get yourself a book doctor. And it turned out that the woman who I found through a referral from someone ended up being basically a therapist for me, because she was very invested in my book and became a very good friend. But she would, when I wrote it like I used to write legal briefs. It was very dry. It was fact. This happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. Then da. And she came along and said, no, we need more emotion. Heart and emotion and feeling, which is exactly what Christy had been saying when she read the manuscript. She was like, yeah, okay, well, this is great, but being as gentle as she could, I sort of need to have a little more emotion in here, honey. And I'm like, Well, write your own book then.
You can't hear that from your wife. You can't coach your husband and wife. We know.
That sounds exactly like my response would be. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, exactly. But
I feel vindicated again.
But Kathy is her name. She would literally take the manuscript that I had written and sit and go through it line by line with me. What were you thinking? How did that make you feel? We've got to get you in here, not just events. And in doing so, it sort of forced me to have to look at what was I thinking?
Right.
Where were my emotions at? What was I in a good state, a bad state? Was I heading out the door? Was I heading in the door? Was I still going in, or was I coming out? And that was tremendously cathartic to me.
Good.
I've said a number of times, I used to have nightmares literally every single week. Sometimes many times a week, 2 or 3 nights a week, that I was back inside the compound at Gold and could not get out, and had gotten myself trapped again. Sometimes I was going in there as a sneaky undercover FBI informant, but they found my phone, and then I didn't have any way to reach the FBI people to let them know I'd been caught. I mean, just like these hot, and I would wake up like, oh my God, I'm there again. Oh,
yep.
Damn.
And when I wake up, I would go, oh, thank God I'm not.
Yep.
But when I actually finished the book all the way to the very end, I haven't had one of those nightmares since.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I think it's so true. It can be so therapeutic and so cathartic. And
well, that's clearly something that needs to get out of you.
Yeah, you got to get out. You got to exercise that shit. I had a lot of those as well. The only recurring one I still have, although it hasn't been recently, actually probably not since she got out, but when Nikki Klein got out, maybe I'm guessing somewhere between 20 and 30 times since leaving, I would have this dream where I'd see Nikki Klein. And for those who don't know who that is, it's a friend of mine that I brought in and stayed after I left and was quite vocal that Keith was innocent and I was bad and lying and all that stuff. It was heartbreaking for me. And I had no way to reach her because she was loyal to Keith.
Right.
And in my dream, I would be reuniting with her, or I would be like in a coffee shop. I was almost always in a coffee shop, and we'd be like laughing. And in the dream, I'd be like, remember, like I joke with her, she's super funny. I'd be like, remember that time we used to be in a cult? And then we'd laugh. And then I would tell her, I have had dreams about this, Nikki. I've had dreams about this, but now it's finally happening. And then I wake up, I'm like, fuck, it's still a dream. Over and over again. Like, but I know that one day I'm going to have it with her in a coffee shop or wherever we decide to meet. And I'll say, okay, now it's happening. You remember when we were to call it, we got out and we laughed and hopefully cry, but Nippy's not there yet. He doesn't want me to do that.
Not that I'm not there yet. It's just that I'd like to see some justice. I'd like
to see we need an apology.
I'd like to see the collateral and blackmail that was released online restored. I'd like to see them take some responsibility for it and what they used their psychology.
We don't know for sure who did what, but
I know there's a group of people that were threatening to do that to you, did it, and then there's been no recourse, and everyone's kind of like, oh, they're so brave for waking up. I just don't have that feeling. I just don't feel
I hear you. Yeah, I know.
They came after me and my family, and they can fix what they did, and then I'll have a conversation with them, and the conversation's for them, not me. Sorry.
I hear you. No, I hear you, Nippy. I hear you. I mean, there are people that are sort of in that similar category in the ex-Scientology community too, and it's.
Look, I don't feel bad. I don't want them to not have good lives. You know, I wish them well in their lives, but that needs to be reconciled somehow, in some way, for me.
I couldn't agree with you more. People like us get into the position, unfortunately, of feeling that we somehow owe anybody who reaches out to us that says, I'm used to be in a cult, some degree of ourselves, that we have to give some part of ourselves to them, because I don't know why these people think that. I mean, the number of people that have said things about me who then turn around and come back and say, oh, yeah, I didn't really mean that, but now can you help me with this?
How do you respond to that?
Sarah, this is, you're hitting on something like right now that I've seen people in the past, and we're getting out, just disappear on us, mostly Sarah, disappear, and now coming to us for help with their projects.
Right.
And I'm not saying don't be gracious, don't be generous, but there's an equilibrium to the universe that I'm sensitive to, and I like to inform it as such, where there's an integrity in the relationships that has to do with justice. You tip the scales this way against me. You're not going to come to me, and I'm not going to, we got to acknowledge that there's a justice and there's an equilibrium here. And karma has its own thing, but there's an exchange between you and I that's off. And the debt isn't the other way around where I owe you anything. And I'm not going to pretend so you can feel okay about what's going on. Let's address this. And then if there's enough left in the relationship where I feel like, hey, we're on the same team, you aren't your optimal self at the time. Fair enough. I've been there. Then let's have that conversation, and we all win. But if you're going to come to us under the premise that you didn't do something for us or didn't have our back, and you want me to pretend that didn't happen, and then you're asking me for something, I'm not game.
Right. I hear you. A very dear friend of mine gave me some wonderful advice, and she said, the people that you should associate with are those who are not constantly coming to you asking for something from you. The people that you want to associate with are those who come to you and say, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Just checking in, wanting to make sure you're okay. Is there something they can do to help whatever you're working on? Those are the people who are really your friends and the people that you should associate with. Steer clear of the ones who are constantly asking for and have an expectation that because you're a public figure and you have, taken a stand about standing up for victims or, exposing abuses, that you somehow owe that to them personally. And this happens a lot.
It does.
It's not enough for you to do the work that you do. You're also supposed to, in the minds of some of these people, you're supposed to personally help them, guide them, do something for them personally, because you're a champion of people who've been victimized. And you are. But that doesn't mean that you can spend your life taking up every single person that reaches out to you and says, hey, Sarah, Nippy, can you help me with my podcast? Can you introduce me to this person? Can you get me on that show that you were on? Can you give me a lead to blah, blah? Can you do this? Can you help? Can you talk to my family? But it's impossible.
It's exhausting.
And, it's exhausting. Yeah, go.
I'll say this too, Mike. Part of the reason, you have a platform, I have a platform, Sarah and I have a platform together, is because we did inconvenience our own lives to go clean up our mess. And it wasn't motivated by the fruits of our labor. It was motivated by, we fucked up. We have something to fix karmically, whatever. And because of that, we've gotten platforms, and I try and stay in my lane as much as I can. When someone comes to me and wants to outsource their leaning into their mistake or the work, the lessons that we got from doing it, it tells me they don't really understand the nature of their mistake or the nature of the journey that it's on to lean into your mistakes, own and take responsibility. And on some level, I don't want to take that responsibility and that opportunity away from them.
Right.
So it's kind of like cleaning up your child's mess all the time. They don't learn responsibility of cleaning up their room. So when someone comes to me, I'm super sensitive as to where they are in their journey, where they're coming from, what they're asking, how they're asking, and I'll elicit information from them They may not know it, and I'll decide based on that, and I'll decide based on their character, and then I'll say, if it's something I can say to them, I'll be like, listen, I think if for your own journey, you need to go do this, because that's where I think you'll get the wisdom. And the wisdom that we've gotten is based solely on experience, not because someone gave us an intellectual understanding of something. We went through it. We ate our crow, and we did all those things, and that informed our character, and it informs every word that comes out of us on our podcast. Right. And so I don't want to leave my lane unless I've earned an authority in that lane. I'm not going to go talk about, cooking or anything. I even try to stay out of politics because I don't think I know, and I'm informed. I think it's an incredibly nuanced thing, and having a pithy stance on Trump's this or Biden's this isn't a real perspective. It's just one of, of tropes. So for me, I think you can kind of tell when people have wisdom, and I try to speak to the wisdom, and then I don't want to go do their work for them. And I think that cheats them of an opportunity, and it's not a good use of my time.
I hear you, Nippy.
Yeah.
What about you, Sarah? What do you say about that?
I'm trying to remember what the question was. After
it wasn't really a question.
It
was me saying, look, you can't treat the people who don't keep asking you for something as the people that you want to associate with, don't feel the obligation that every single person who comes to you asking something from you, you have to deliver.
This is a source of
I'm trying to say no more.
That's why I explained it in the way that I explained it.
If there's a pattern, Nippy says no more, I say yes more. I'm trying to say no more, Nippy's trying to say yes more.
I will say that one of Sarah's greatest attributes is that she does say yes and she cares about people. And one of my greatest attributes is I say no, and I could probably say yes more, and she could probably say no more. And she could be more discerning, and I could be a little bit more sensitive to things.
But I do need to be mindful of my time for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. Yeah. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Sarah.
No, I don't feel put on the spot.
It's just something that comes up repeatedly and has come up a lot fairly recently in my world. And I just think it's sort of important to keep in perspective.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to then start feeling guilty. Oh, I didn't do this. Oh, I didn't do that. Oh, I didn't help this person. Or I didn't. Wow. There is the reason for having a podcast and writing a book and appearing on Megyn Kelly or going on Fox News or whatever is because that amount of time that you can devote to that reaches X number of people.
Yeah.
The amount of time that you devote to an individual reaches one person.
That's a good.
Totally.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah. That's a good point.
And you have got to be judicious with your time. Devote your time to writing a book. Devote your time to doing your podcast. Devote your time to doing major media.
Mm-hmm.
You will accomplish so much more than devoting your time to X number of individuals. And you gotta somehow keep a balance. And I know because I'm very similar to you guys. When someone reaches out to me, I'm like, oh my God, I can't turn them down. I feel bad turning them down. But then I go, if I do this all day, I'm not actually going to do anything important. All I'm going to be doing, and it's not that it's not important to help each individual, but I'm not accomplishing what I'm trying to accomplish.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And time is our only commodity. I think once you hit a certain age, you recognize that is the only commodity we have. Yeah.
Yep.
And that actually, just so you know, the level of how we feel about you and our friendship with you is we've pushed all of our interviews till August so we can get this book done, except for you. Except for you.
Thank you.
And the Fox News, just because it was such a big, but also
could be a phone call too. It's like,
this is just fun. And all this is fun. I don't have to prepare anything, but I have to just tell you, and I was waiting to tell you in person because it's kind of cool. The reason we had to push by an hour today is because earlier we got a very last minute invite to do David Spade and Dana Carvey's podcast.
Wow.
Superfly. Yeah. Because I'm not sure why they decided to reach out now, if it was because of the Fox News. I know he did see The Vow back in the day and we'd messaged a little bit.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
But that's what I did just before. And that was just crazy wild because I was like, when is that opportunity going to come again? And it was hilarious and so nice to like just laugh because they're two
Very
hilarious,
funny.
very, very funny people. Yeah. So, but you're absolutely right. I do this because I want to do this. And it is like just talking to a friend, and this is easy and it's fun. And you've been one of the most inspirational, supportive friends in this space that since we got out, and it's a no-brainer. And I think you actually did give a similar piece of advice when you came on our podcast last fall or the year before. I don't know, whenever that was last.
November, December of 22.
Yeah, 22. So I think I was in the weeds of feeling, guilty. I don't think I feel guilty anymore. I'm just trying to manage my time as best as I can.
Also, we're at CrimeCon, and you should do CrimeCon.
Have you done CrimeCon ever? Do you know what that is?
No.
You should do that.
Okay, I'll connect you if you want.
They would love you there.
And your book. Explain what it is.
Well, CrimeCon's basically, I think, like all the podcasts, all the TV shows, all
media.
the things in media, and they go there and they have like kind of,
it's a convention.
A convention where they basically educate people on, how crime works, and cults fell under that umbrella, and I'm sure Scientology would as well.
Yeah, I mean, the book signing and media appearances and meet and greets, and you can do a talk, you can do a live podcast.
If you do it, we could go there and do a live podcast, and it would be.
Oh, that would be fun.
Awesome.
That'd be fun.
It would be. It was such a big audience too, and it's
huge,
a lot of social
ballroom.
media stuff. And the thing, I'll ask you this, Mike. I'm somewhat of an introvert. As I've gotten older, social situations tend to drain me more than they fill my cup. It's just kind of how I'm wired. And I always kind of question, how long I'm going to do this and what we're going to do, and if we're making an impact. It was every time I have that question, something happens to us in the real world that confirms I should be doing it. Yep. Down to literally, Nippy, what you specifically said changed I'm like, okay, I can't deny that.
Listen, like one day he'll be like, I don't know if I'm done. And then we'll like bump into somebody at the airport, and they'll be like, to Nippy, not even to me, which is usually what happens.
Normally it's Sarah's story kind of, and I'm in it. So,
and they'll be like, Nippy, how you handled and they'll like literally the same day or the next day they'll go to Nippy and it'll be reinforced.
It's happened 3 times, 4 times, and it happened a lot at the CrimeCon thing, and I just don't have that relationship with who I'm talking to, and then I get a little uncomfortable with like the authority or I don't want to call it power, but the influence with it, and it's kind of, I don't want it. Like it's not what I sought out to do. At the same time, if a lane to help other people opens up to you, you by all means should take it. Even if you're going to be somewhat clumsy at it, you'll get better at it. And that's kind of how I've handled this, because I'm just not interested. I guess for me, it's been when I've been in a position of authority and power, it's because I've earned it. And it's because I was the best athlete on my team and I got voted into a captain. And it was just something I didn't question. Like I didn't have to worry about how and why I got it. Now I'm kind of like, I had something happen to me in my life and this lane's opened up, and I don't feel the earning of the influence and whatever I have is proportionate to my skill set. And it feels a little bit harder to quantify or justify for me when someone comes up to me and is kind of gushing and I'm like, thank you, but I don't feel like they're there because I did something. Does that make sense? Am I articulating it kind of? Well,
it makes sense. I absolutely think that you're underselling yourself, Nippy.
Well, I mean,
what you have accomplished and whatever it is that people see in you is because of what you did, not because of what something that some other force or something created. You have navigated your way through an experience that a lot of people can relate to, not because they were in NXIVM, but because, and this happens to me all the time. The people that write to me and said, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I was in an abusive relationship. I went to a Catholic school. I was in the Boy Scouts. Whatever it is, the fact that you have spoken to people and made them feel, and what you really accomplish and what we all try to accomplish is to make these people feel they're not alone.
Right.
That they are not crazy. Yeah. That they are not out of step with humanity. That they are real people who have real struggles, and there are a lot of other people just like them. If they can get through the day because of something that you said or did, then hey, that's all I need, dude.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to own your accomplishment, because it is an accomplishment. I mean, you guys have accomplished a great deal and continue to accomplish a great deal and help a whole lot of people. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I'm sure that you guys get emails and messages and stuff on social media from people saying, I just want to thank you. You don't know me.
Daily.
That stuff is so incredibly gratifying.
It fuels me.
That's why we do what we do.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we want to help those people. That the fact that you have and that people recognize you for it is a damn good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on board with that. I appreciate it.
All right. I gotta talk him off the ledge.
That's the TED Talk. That's your TED Talk. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you still have a partner.
Thank you. He is the best partner. We just celebrate our 11-year anniversary. That's Nippy's lovely. 50th, our 7-year freedom. Lots of things
Troy's
to celebrate. Troy's 10.
My dad's
amazing.
Next week. Yeah, life is good.
Mine's 47. That's less exciting, but you know.
It's exciting.
Well, don't be too anxious to get to 50.
No, 2 more years. 3 years to plan something epic.
Exactly. Well, we're like coming up to an hour, and I told you this would be an hour, and I know how busy you are. I wanted to mention, though, before we go, Sarah, your TED Talk, which I watched, I guess it was from a year ago. Well, how long ago was it?
I did it a year ago, and then it came out in the fall,
December?
And then it went out again on the main, because it was a TEDx talk, but then TED released it, so now I can say I did a TED Talk, which is like a different thing than the TEDx talk, but whatever.
I didn't even know the difference. Anyway,
I'm
going to have a link to it because
it
was wonderful.
Thank you.
You did such a good job. Oh my God. I don't know. Did you have a teleprompter?
I did, but I didn't use it. I'm very proud to say I did not use it.
A monitor on the ground that had.
They call it a confidence booster.
Right.
So I felt really good that it was there.
I was going to comment on it because I know you didn't use it. I saw it there. I saw you glance at it maybe once or twice, but
no, I never actually looked at it. Yeah.
You just extemporaneously did an amazing talk, and I recommend it to anybody. I had actually extracted stuff that I was going to talk to you and say, okay, well, you raised these points. There's this. Go watch the TED Talk. It's definitely worth watching, and I wish I could do one that good.
You probably could.
I'm not sure anybody ever will invite me to do one, but
I'm pretty sure you could.
You could. I believe you could. I'm just going on there to see.
You could use the confidence booster.
You that's the thing, is you can use the confidence booster. Everyone else that I was on that stage with used it. I just was like, I just knew that if I looked down, I was gonna lose my flow.
Yeah. Well,
so
it was terrific.
Thank you.
Really good. And like I said, I'll have the link to it on my blog when this goes up.
That means a lot to me. Thank you. I love sharing it. I'm trying to find it online because I wanted to see. Last time I checked, it had 500,000 views, which is crazy to me, and also has garnered some really wonderful new guests that came out of the woodwork, including one that I think drops next week about a whole cult in this NFT Discord channel in New York, an art dealing NFT Discord channel online community cult.
Wow.
Yeah. It's wild. It's totally wild. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll definitely listen to that one.
When does this drop?
Probably in 3 or 4 weeks. I have a few others. We're trying to just put them out once a week. I'm now on a schedule of every Tuesday morning, and Christy sits down and edits these and puts them together and then uploads them. Like, she doesn't have enough work to do, but she's much better at this than I am. I don't have the patience. Angel Christy does that for me.
Christy. Oh, we love Christy.
Cool. All right, guys. Well,
all right, Mike. Awesome seeing you, man.
Awesome talking to you. Whether it's my podcast or your podcast or just sitting around chatting over a meal, it's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Mike, for having us on. You're the best.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for tuning in. You can find more episodes of Exposing Scientology wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to check out my best-selling book, A Billion Years, My Escape from a Life in the Highest Ranks of Scientology. It's available on Amazon, hardback, softback, and as an audiobook. Until next time, be well and happy.